Hi, and welcome to Crafts with Ash. My name's Ashley, and today I am so excited to share with you some end of summer DIY ideas. Today's video is super special because it is in collaboration with Annalee Ashby. And for those who know her, you know she is absolutely amazing. We decided to throw out some summer DIYs, and I decided to go with a coastal theme. But more on that in just a little bit. If you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that little notification bell so you can get notified anytime I upload a new video. Also, don't forget to hit the drop-down menu and click all so you receive all notifications. Then, hop on over to Facebook and Instagram and let's get social. Join my crafting community by clicking follow and like my pages so you can see behind the scene content I know you're not going to want to miss. All right, now it's time to get into these coastal DIYs. For my first DIY, I'm going to start off by using this little mountain sign that I got from the Dollar Tree. And of course, the first thing I have to do is take off that dreaming word right on the front. I found it was easy to heat it up with my hairdryer and then just use a scraper tool to go ahead and scrape it off. Now, once I got a little part off, you can see it pulled off very easily. It was just getting it started that was just a little difficult. Next, I used my screwdriver to take off the hanger on the back. After that, I flipped my sign over and I peeled off the paper that was on the front. As you can see, it came off pretty easy. Then after I got it all off, I went ahead and I sanded down the front of my sign. Next, I took my ruler and I drew a line in the middle of the two little mountains. Now, I don't know if these are supposed to be mountains, but that's what I'm going to call them. Now, I want to separate these two, so that's why I'm drawing the line. Then I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to go back and forth and score it quite a few times. And after I do that, it was easy just to snap in half. After I got the two pieces apart, I took my knife and I just kind of cleaned up the edges a little bit. There was still a little paper hanging over, so I just cut that off. And then I'm going to take my sandpaper and I'm going to sand the edges down so they're nice and smooth. Real quick, I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to my YouTube channel. If you're new here, I hope you choose to stick around for a while by subscribing to my channel, and I want to thank you for choosing to join me today. If you're returning, thank you so much for coming back. I truly hope that everyone enjoys what they see today. I really did have a lot of fun putting all of these together. And I got a lot of inspiration for these DIYs from my trip to Myrtle Beach. So I could not wait to put what I saw into some great home decor pieces. So I hope you love it. So after I sanded down all the edges and cleaned them up a little bit, I took both of my pieces and I gave them one good coat of ivory chalk paint from Waverly. After my pieces were dry, I took a piece of burlap and cut it to fit the bigger of the triangles. Then I cut off the seams because I'm going to fray the edges. These two triangles are now going to become sails in my project. Then by using some hot glue, I glued my burlap onto the bigger sail. Then I took some scissors and just cut it down so it fit. Next, I took this piece of bamboo that I had left over from a wind chime, and this did come from the Dollar Tree, and I just dry brushed some of that ivory paint all over the bamboo. Now, what I have here are actually 2 pieces of bamboo on a longer dowel rod, but you're going to see it later on in the video, I'm actually going to just use the 1 piece, so I'll take it apart, but you'll see that soon. After that, I took these jumbo craft sticks that I got from Walmart, and I'm simply just laying them out because now we're going to make the bottom of our boat. So what I did was I put them underneath the stick, and this is, I think, when I realized that the stick was just a little bit too long. So I'm going to put 3 of them next to each other, and then I'm going to use some painter's tape to tape them all together. Next, I flipped them around, and by using a pencil, I drew a shape of a boat. And I'm sorry, I kind of went out of frame here, but you can see I'm just making curved lines on either side. And then I'm just going to use my scissors, and I'm going to cut on my lines. After that, I'm going to take these little craft sticks and I'm going to cut them down so it fits all 3 of my big craft sticks. And that is how I'm going to glue the big craft sticks all together. I hope that made sense. So I'm doing 2 in the middle, and then I'm going to take off the tape. I did not take off the tape first because I didn't want the craft sticks to move. So there you go, see, and now they're all together. Then I cut another small craft stick in half, and I'm just going to put those on either side to give it extra support. So now I'm just trying to figure out where I want to put the bottom of my boat, and this is where I decide it's just a little too long. So I pulled one of my bamboo sticks off of the dowel rod, and then I'm going to set this up like a boat. Now I did want the bottom of my boat to overlap my stick just a little bit, so that's how I'm going to arrange it. So now that I have all of those top pieces, I'm going to get a long board that I got from the Dollar Tree, and this is just a big square sign. I apologize, I don't know why I didn't show the front. And I'm going to cover this in white chalk paint. Once that was dry, I took my Waverly chalk paint in Pool, and I am going to dry brush that on top of my sign going side to side. Now that green paint in that coffee filter is completely dry, so I'm not using green paint at all. It's just still on there, but I just didn't want to confuse you. All I'm doing is taking that pool color and I'm going to dry brush that over the top half of my sign. I know it's kind of hard to tell here, but in the photos you'll be able to notice it. Then I'm going to take my chalk paint in the color Ocean and I'm going to dry brush that on the bottom of my sign. Now I am still using the same brush because I do want the 2 colors to blend where they meet. So I'm just going to put the darker ocean color at the bottom to represent the ocean. Now I kind of felt that the ocean color was just a little too dark, so I just mixed in a little bit of the white. And now I'm kind of mixing all 3 colors together and dry brushing over that because the ocean has different tones in it, so I wanted to give it more dimension. While that board was drying, I took the bottom of my boat and a baby wipe and dipped that in Waverly Antique Wax, and I'm going to use this to faux stain my boat. Now I am making sure to get the edges and sides of my boat as well. Next, I'm going to take my white Waverly chalk paint and a chippy brush, and I'm just going to dry brush that chalk paint over my boat. Once both of those pieces were dry, it was time to put all of this together. So I arranged my boat onto my board, and then I hit that bamboo stick just one more time with that white paint because I needed it to stand out a little bit more. Then to make the bottom of my boat 3D, I added some of these blocks from the Dollar Tree to the back of the boat, and then I'm going to hot glue that down at the bottom of my board. Now you can see that I stuck the bamboo stick underneath the bottom of my boat. So now I'm just arranging it and making sure I love how it looks. Now before I glue everything down, I took these stencils that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to stencil this entire stencil or whatever fit on that other sail. Now, I loved using these stencils. They were so easy to apply. I just used a small craft stick and just rubbed them right on. They came out clean and crisp, and I would highly recommend these from the Dollar Tree. After I lifted my rub-on transfer off, I just filled in the little bare areas with the little seashells that were on the rub-on sheet. After that, I arranged my boat back together, and I started off by hot gluing the stick down on my board first, but in a little bit you're going to see me peel that off because the sails were not in the middle. Now, before I hot glued the rest of the pieces down, I decided that I wanted to add a little bit more dimension to the pieces by dry brushing some Waverly Antique Wax on the edges of all of my pieces. Then I went ahead and hot glued the rest of my boat accessories down on my board. Now to make it easier, I actually drew a line where I knew my pieces had to go. That way, when I had the glue on, I can place them just where they were. After my boat was all glued down, I took some seashells and I glued them to the bottom right side of my boat. Finally, to add a hanger, I'm using this cotton twine nautical rope that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to tie 2 knots on 2 ends of the twine and then hot glue those knots over the existing holes. Now you do want to make sure to use a generous amount of hot glue to glue these down. Once they were glued down, I cut off the ends of those knots, and that was it. Now I have this super cute boat sign, and I think this is so nautical, and of course it's rustic because that's so me, but I love the colors in this, and I think that those rub-on transfers went so well. Now I did hit this again one more time with that Waverly Antique Wax just to help my little pieces pop from the background, but I absolutely love how this came out. I don't know if you're into coastal or nautical or beach theme. I don't decorate like that in my house at all, but if I did, this would be on my wall for sure. What do you think? So as I stated earlier, today's video is in collaboration with Annalee Ashby, and she is so talented. I love all of her DIYs. I mean, look at that. How rustic and farmhouse are those, and she is more of the farmhouse. And even though I'm not really farmhouse, I still love her projects. And not to mention, she was the first champion of the Creative Champion contest hosted by Heidi Sample. So if that doesn't tell you anything, she is amazing. I'm gonna have her video linked in my description box below, so make sure to check out her video after you finish with mine. Let's get back to the DIYs. This second project is so easy. I started off with this canvas from the Dollar Tree, and after I took it off of the packaging, I went ahead and used a knife to cut around the staples to get the canvas part off of the wooden frame. After my canvas was removed, I took my sanding block and I sanded down the front just a little bit to make it a little bit more smooth. Then I gave this entire frame a good coat of ivory chalk paint. Once that was dry, I took my chippy brush and dipped it in some Waverly Antique Wax and dry brushed that all over my frame. Now I did make sure to get the inside of the frame and the outside, so I got all edges of this frame. Then to blend it all together, I took some sandpaper and sanded it down. Next, I'm going to take this fish net that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to spread it over my canvas so it covers the entire thing. Then I'm going to cut it down, and by using my staple gun, I'm going to start to staple my net to the back of the frame. Now, this did kind of take a little moving around and, sizing and just trying to figure out how I wanted this to lay. At first I thought I wanted it to be doubled up, so you're going to see me wrap it around the back, but then I do decide that I like it just one layer just like that, so you'll see me cut off some little ends. But once I did figure out how I wanted it to look, it looked so cute. I did also use my hot glue gun to tack some of the string down as well. And then when I kind of had an idea on how I wanted it to lay, that's when I used my staple gun to make it more permanent. Now when you do this, you want to make sure to pull the fish net very tight and taut. That way it lays nicely over your frame and doesn't droop. So this is where I decide I did not want it double layered, so I'm just trimming some of the net off, and then I'm going to staple and hot glue down the little loose pieces. Basically, I'm just working with it until I get it to how I like. There really is no method to this, so I'm just trimming it here and there wherever I see fit. Now, as I was doing this, a little handle started to form right up top. You can see where the string is, so I just kept it there because then that way I can hang this sign. I don't know how that happened. I can't even tell you how to do that. I just noticed that it kind of ended up like that, so I ran with it. So at this point I had the basic layout how I wanted my fishnet. So now I'm just cleaning it up a little bit. So like I said, I'm just trimming it up and then I'm gluing some little ends down. Basically, I'm making sure that none of the little strings are hanging in the middle of my frame. After I had my fishnet the way I wanted it to look, I started hot gluing little seashells to the bottom left corner of my frame. To complete this, I'm going to take a clothespin, and I had already had this painted white from another DIY, and I'm going to hot glue it to the top of my frame, and now we have a cute picture holder. I loved how this came out, and I thought it was perfect to add a picture of my daughter and her little cousin with their great-grandparents from the beach, and I'm going to give it to my grandma and grandpa for them to keep. What do you think? Next DIY was really fun to make. So I took this picture from the Dollar Tree, and after removing it from its packaging, I'm going to use my heat gun or my hair dryer and a scraper tool to get that black frame off. Now, I was very careful because I am going to use this black frame, but as you can see, it did kind of break, but it was an easy fix because all I did was hot glue it back together. Next, I took the sign part and I gave that a good coat of Waverly chalk paint in white, and I did make sure to paint the sides of my sign as well. After that dried, I took this pack of craft sticks that I got from Lowe's, and I just started cutting them down in different lengths. I did make sure to cut off the curved parts on either end, and then I just started laying them out so it just looked like different length boards. And then I just kind of covered this whole thing and just cut them down as I went. Now, when I went to the second row, I made sure that there was a different length stick underneath what was on top, if that makes sense. So I didn't put two of the same size on top of each other or next to each other. And I did this until my whole board was covered. Real quick, this is your friendly reminder that if you're loving what you see today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. Not only does it really help my channel to grow, but it also tells YouTube that you're loving what you see and that you want to see more, and YouTube will put my videos in your suggestions. So be sure to give this video a like for more DIY and home decor inspiration. So when I got to the bottom of the board, I noticed that the craft sticks were going to be too wide to cover up that white space. So I arranged them, made sure that they were all lined up and they went from side to side. And then I took two other craft sticks, cut them down to how I wanted them to look, and then I decided to go ahead and hot glue those on. Then I proceeded to hot glue the rest of my sticks down on my board. After that, I took my sandpaper and I sanded the edges of my sticks down. That way they were smooth, because I did cut them so they were a little jagged, so I wanted to smooth them down. Then I took my scissors and cut off any of the stick that was hanging over and then sanded that down as well. Now when I was cutting this last piece, it did break, so I just had to piece it together again. So I just cut down little pieces and just fit them in, and it worked out fine. Once that was done, it was time to paint my board. So I'm going to be using 4 different colors. I'm going to use the Waverly chalk paint in the color Pool, Waverly chalk paint in the color Mineral, Waverly chalk paint in the color Ivory, and Waverly Antique Wax. And what I started doing was just using all the colors to paint one of my little boards, and I made sure not to put 2 of the same color next to each other. Now I did have to give 2 coats to the Pool and the Ivory color, and I did this until my whole board was painted. I really had a lot of fun painting this, just because it was just fun switching between all of the different colors and testing out where to put every color or trying to figure it out. So this just, I don't know, it's kind of relaxing just painting my sign. Once that was dry, I took my sandpaper and I sanded this down really well so some of the natural wood was peeking through from underneath. Then I took my Waverly antique wax and I dry brushed over the lighter parts, and then I took my Waverly white wax and dry brushed over the entire sign. And I thought that this added a ton of dimension. I love dry brushing the waxes on because I just love that rustic look. Now, if this is not for you and you don't like the rustic look, you can absolutely skip this step. You don't have to do it. That's the beauty of DIYing. You can do whatever makes you happy. After that, I sanded it down one more time just to help it all blend in. Next, I took that frame and I gave it a coat of ivory chalk paint. Then I took my chippy brush and that Waverly antique wax and dry brushed over that. After that was dry, I placed that frame back into the middle of my board, and I, at this point, had not glued it down. Then I took this burlap ribbon that I got from the Dollar Tree, and I cut off a piece to fit in the middle of the frame, and then I frayed the edges by cutting the edges off and just pulling the strings out. Next, I'm going to hot glue that burlap in the middle of the frame, and then I'm going to glue down the frame. Next, I took these wooden letters that I got from the Dollar Tree and I pulled out an H, an M, and an E. Now, I did like the natural wood, so I didn't necessarily want to paint these, so I just dry brushed some Waverly antique wax over each of my letters. Now, to create an O, I just pulled out a cute seashell. After that, I just glued all of my pieces down. Then I felt like this needed one final detail, so I took these silver tacks that I got from the Dollar Tree and pushed one in every corner of that frame. And then I brushed over the tacks with that Waverly antique wax. I really love this. I think it is perfect for coastal decor. It would be perfect at a beach house or a lake house, and I just love how rustic and beachy this looked. I'm actually going to give this to my mom because the colors behind it, the blue colors, would match perfectly in her bathroom, but I'm actually going to change out the word home for the word bath, and I think she's really going to enjoy it. She's been trying to accessorize her bathroom, and I think that this would fit right in. What do you think? This next DIY is so easy. So I started off with this pack of paint sticks from Lowe's, and this is the bigger of the two, and we're going to use all three in the pack. Now to arrange these into a sign, I'm going to line them up so the handles are on opposite sides. So as you can see, they're pointing in different directions. Then to attach all of these, I'm going to add some hot glue, and I only wanted a little space in between each one. So I took a small popsicle stick and I'm just gluing 3 of them down so that way all of the painter sticks are attached. Now you do want to make sure that you glue those small popsicle sticks on the back of your paint sticks, the side with the rulers. After that, I flip my sign over, and again, by using a baby wipe and Waverly Antique Wax, I gave my sign a faux stain. After that was dry, I took this burlap ribbon that I got from Big Lots actually, and it's white, and that's why I picked it up, because I had this DIY in mind, and I cut off a piece to fit in the middle of my sign. Then I cut off the edges of that ribbon because I'm going to fray them. After that, I stuck it in the middle of my sign, and at this point, I have not hot glued it down. After that, I'm going to pull out these 3 little wooden pieces that I got from the Dollar Tree. So first was a ship wheel that came in a wind chime set, and then a big seashell. Then I'm going to use this starfish off of that hanging sign. So I flipped all of them over, and on the seashell and the wheel, they did have holes, so I used my Dollar Tree spackling to go ahead and fill those in. Once that dried, I sanded it down. That way, they were all ready to paint. Next, I used that Waverly chalk paint in the color Pool to paint each one of these little pieces. And I did give each one of them 2 coats of this chalk paint. Once those were dry, I took that white wax and my chippy brush and I dry brushed over each one of these pieces. Now I did make sure to pay attention to the edges, and I made them just a little darker, and I painted in the same direction, just one direction going across, and I did this on all 3. After that, I did the same thing by using my Waverly Antique Wax, and again I really paid attention to the edges of all of my pieces so that way they were a little bit more highlighted. Now when I started dry brushing with the Waverly Antique Wax, I started brushing going in, so from the edge into the shape. But then I realized that I actually liked the look better if I brushed out. And you're going to see me switch here right now. So now I'm brushing going outwards, and I really like that better because it just kind of added a little bit more dimension on the actual shape, and you can see the difference between the 2 techniques. And again, I did this on all 3 of my pieces. After that, I did randomly put some of that wax in the middle of those pieces. Next, I arranged the pieces going in a line across my board. Now, you're going to see that I make a few changes here because I liked where this was going, but I didn't love it. So what I decided was the ribbon part actually needed to be a little thicker. So I went ahead and cut off another piece and did the same thing, cut off the edges, and then frayed them. Next, I put both of those pieces of ribbon on my board and then put my shapes back on top. Now, I decided that I just didn't like the color of the board and it just needed to be a little darker. So I went over it one more time with that Waverly Antique Wax and just made sure that I put it on a little heavier so it made it darker. And I really do think that this added so much because it really made the stuff on top pop from the board. So now it's time to assemble my sign. So I'm going to go ahead and hot glue my burlap pieces on. And you don't need to use a ton of hot glue because it is burlap and it sticks really well. So I just tacked it all down, and then after that I'm going to hot glue my shapes on top. Now, as I was looking at this, I did notice that one end was longer than the other, so I just cut it down and then frayed those edges. To complete this sign, I'm just going to add a hanger by doing what we did before and taking that cotton nautical rope, tying 2 knots, and then hot gluing the knots on either side of my board. Now, this is very simple. I thought about adding something inside of the seashell and the starfish, but I just couldn't decide what to add and I didn't want to make it too much. So I just really love the simplicity of this. I think it's very muted, but it's really pretty and so coastal. And I've really grown to love that pool color. But you tell me, what do you think? I absolutely love how each one of these coastal DIYs came out. Now, typically I'm not a coastal type of home decor girl, but I am loving these blue tones and just the beachy theme. You're gonna have to let me know in the comments which one was your favorite. I think that my favorite was that first DIY with the boat because I love all of the textures and all of the dimension in that project. I want to thank Annalee Ashby for collaborating with me on this video. I was so excited. She accepted my invitation to do so, and I cannot wait to see what she came up with. Don't forget to check out her link in my description box below. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Just a reminder, if you haven't done so already, please don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that little notification bell so you can get notified anytime I upload a new video. Also, if you love what you saw today, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. Well, until I see you again, I'll craft with you soon. Bye!